We're working on the eighth chakra tonight. And the eighth chakra is fairly new for a lot of people. I know that we can go on Instagram and Facebook and the internet, Google, and look at the chakra system, and you're always going to see the Buddha looking guy sitting there with his arms crossed, his legs crossed, and you'll see 7 of those shining chakras. And now as we're ascending, and now as more information is being brought to reality, the eighth chakra is coming up more and more. People are looking into their past lives. They're looking into the Akashic records. They're looking into the places within themselves that they're changing and growing from. And when we do that, we start to touch other aspects of ourselves. We have to remember something here. We are right now in a third dimension frequency, meaning we value our time and space. Everything is condensed into time and space. We are in a linear timeline, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. We are on this linear timeline. But as we ascend and grow from that aspect, the fourth dimension is about letting go of time. It's about recognizing time is happening at the same time. So you are experiencing many lifetimes at the same time from a fifth dimensional perspective. Because when we go into fifth dimension and when we ascend into this awareness of our true authentic self, what we are doing is we're bringing in all of the lifetime experiences. We are no longer shielded from all of the experiences that we've already felt and experienced. And that's in a very exciting place to be, because some of the aspects of our healing that we're doing right now may not be from this lifetime to begin with. We might be bringing in from childhood, from birth, before even time came for you to be in this planet. You brought back certain qualities of yourself that you chose to go ahead and look at and to observe and to say, I want to do this better. I want you to imagine that before life even began for all of us, we sat there and we were watching our show of ourself, our previous life was being watched. We were watching it from a different perspective here. And when we were watching this life in that different perspective, this different human, this different entity, we were watching all the things that we could have done better, all the things we wanted to do that we didn't get to do. And when we did this, what we did was we decided to come back. We chose the life experiences that we were going to have to unfold, and we were going to bring a new perspective to the soul. And this is something that you can either accept or not. You guys have your own belief systems, and I support you in those things. To believe what you choose to believe and take out of it what you can understand and really take away from. And the thing is that if you could imagine that you were sitting there and you were reviewing your life and you were seeing all the things that you wanted to do, you knew coming into this life the things that you were going to have to tackle. I truly believe before my mother and I got here on this planet, we made a pact. She was like, I'm going to go and do this for you. I'm going to bring you into this world, and you are going to experience loss at a very early age. And in that time that we chose to do this, we also chose the experiences that were going to happen, how much pain, how much suffering, all the things that my body and mind were going to have to experience in that lifetime. We knew it. And not only did she know that, she also knew that after this lifetime, she was going to help others with their experiences. So she chose the angel life after. And Georgie, my aunt, who's the medium, she knows very well, it's confirmed, we are very confirmed that she is the angel that is helping us through our process of awakening and awareness. And fifth dimension is the ascension process, is where we're going next. This is where life is changing for all of us. We all chose to be here for the ascension. We chose this process, and we chose to be here for others in their process. But really, the process was us finding our consciousness in this human body, in this human experience. And during the time, we knew that we weren't going to be awakened and aware of any of our past lives. But we get hints, we get these feelings, we get these ideas, we get these reassurances when we go to the Akashic record reader and they tell us about these past lives we've had, and they are very similar to experiences of suffering that we're having in this lifetime. And so when you understand where we're headed in this ascension process, we can start to be more forgiving of where we are right now. And so something that I really think that we need to really start to talk about in a new perspective. This is something brand new. I'm pulling this out, I'm listening, I'm participating, and I'm very excited about this information. And this information is about our story. This is about our story. The one we came here with. The one that we chose to participate in with this lifetime. And in our story, it's our shield. It is the shield that helps us through our everyday life so that we don't go crazy. And so often as we go through the experiences, these spiritual people that are going through these real life experiences, so often what we end up doing is we end up taking these stories that we're carrying around with ourselves, and we're feeling like we need to rush past them. Just get over it. Let it go. Stop thinking of those things. Stop creating these things. Stop doing this. Stop doing that. But one of the things to think about is the fact that we really are not the ones in control. And when we take a step back and realize we're the human part of the process, but we're not really in control. Higher self is guiding the process. Higher self is there that's doing the knowing and the being. And we're just the vessel. We are being brought ahead and we're moving through the process as we go. And the more that we can recognize that in ourselves, the more that we can stay with our story for just a little bit longer with forgiveness. Because, you know, we need that story. That story that we're carrying around, that story that I'm talking about, that's the traumas, the life experiences, the parents, the lifestyle, the environment that's around us, the work that we've chose to do, all the things that we're doing in our life, that is the stuff that creates our story. And we create the narrative in that story with either our spirit mind or our ego self. Either way, there is always some kind of narrative going on inside of our mind. And that narrative is a very special security blanket for all of us when we're still trying to bust away from ego and go into our spirit conscious self. And so sometimes we want to rush the process. We want to think, come on, I should be past this by now, or I shouldn't think those thoughts by now, or I've done enough work by now. But in reality, the consciousness, our higher self was directed to come here, and we had this idea of how we were going to experience it. And part of the experience was feeling the emotions from the experience. And when we're feeling those emotions from those experiences, it can be pretty intense. It can be really intense. And when it's super intense in our lives, what we end up doing is we have to shield us from our emotions sometimes. Or sometimes we go into our ego self sometimes. Or sometimes we can get back into our spirit self. But it's really important to understand that every moment that you're living is a spiritual experience. And when you understand that in a broader sense, you can start being forgiven of yourself when you go down the negative road sometimes. Or if you fall off the rails and go into ego and stay there for a little while. You can give yourself permission to say, this is still part of my spirituality because I needed to feel that at that moment. I need to experience that at that moment. And it's at that moment that you're in that experience where consciousness pushes its little head out and says, hello, hey, you're doing okay, we're all right, you're still moving forward. It's that peace that comes over you after you've done that freak out. You ever cry so hard And after you've cried so hard, all of a sudden it feels okay. You feel okay. You feel like, oh my God, that felt so much better. Because Spirit just came in and said, thank you. Thank you for doing that. We needed that at that moment. I needed to have that experience at that moment. So when you're creating from a high conscious place, your story justifies what you're feeling. Your story is bringing out these emotions for you to decide, okay, are we working on this today? Is this what we're going to do today? Or are we going to push it back down? Are we going to pretend it doesn't happen? Or are we going to do this? You might be like, you know what? I do not want to do this right now. I cannot handle life right now. This person's doing something to me. This person's doing something to me. This person's doing something. And obviously you're in super ego, because what we're doing is we've created the narrative for not just yourself. You have created a story for every single person in your life. Every single person in your life, you've created a story. You're the director, and you've put those people in those stories, right? But guess what? Those people have their own narrative and their own stories that they're putting on us too. And so this is that we're all directors in our own story trying to live it up. And when that person's not living up to the story that I've created for them, it really messes us up. It messes us up when they're not living to that story. Why aren't you living to my story? I created it just like this. You know what's going to happen if you don't listen to my story? It's going to go like this. But only from my perspective will it go like that. Because only from my collective experiences will I ever have that own perspective of that. I can give somebody advice, but it's never going to come out exactly the way that I think it is for somebody else. Because that's their story. That's their place that they're in. And as we continue to feel within our story, the story gets lighter and lighter and lighter. Like, my mother has been gone for 40 years now. So because of that as experience, it's very easy for me to speak the words about my mother. It's very easy because I've felt those feelings for 40 years. And I personally feel like I've completed very big parts of that process. And then ego will come in and say, oh, but you still feel abandoned by her. And that's another piece of my story that I have to work on. But I realize that it's lighter. I can work with it more because I've been working with it for a very long time, and consciousness is saying, okay, you've done that process and it's time to shed some light. You don't have to feel that pain anymore from there. And it's healing. When you create that emotion and you're feeling it, whatever it is you're healing because you're in it. You're willing to be in it. But sometimes we need to create a shield around us, that I've said before, carrying that shield around, because that shield has been our protector. And that shield is very personal for us. It gives us our space of feeling content and love and feeling like, I got this. Even though it's just pretend, even though it's really not bringing us that really deep peace that we're looking for, it's what we needed at the time. But when people are telling you, you gotta let go of that and let go of that, and you're feeling like, I'm trying, I keep hearing I should let go, but I just can't let go. That starts to feel like failure. You start to feel like, wow, I've been on this spiritual journey for so long, and why am I still not able to let go? It's because consciousness isn't ready to let go yet. Because we're still thinking that we have so much control that we really don't. We don't have all of this control that we think we do. Even when we look at our thoughts, sometimes our thoughts we don't have that much control over. We like to say we do. We try really hard every day to put as much positive out there. But when we go into the negative, does that mean that we're less spiritual than somebody else on their spiritual process? No. And that's the beauty, is no. We're just going through it in our own time. Consciousness is living and breathing through us. And the more that we accept that part of ourselves and we trust that part of ourselves and go through and sit with those feelings, the more that we can do this. And the stories, they've shaped who we are. And so what's wonderful, and what is very wonderful, is when we start to see other people and we watch other people in their stories. So when other people are going through their stories, it's easier for us to recognize our own. We can see it better from somebody else. How easy is it for us to judge others? So how easy is it for us to look at somebody else and see what they're doing and say, wow, they're doing it wrong? And that is just ego. That is just our ego self with that story. We're carrying it around, and we are doing that so it's reflections for each other. And so when somebody is doing a lot of the story, they're just playing in their story. Instead of getting upset that they're in their story, just watch it. Because in that moment that you're watching their story, you're not paying attention to your own story. And sometimes we could use a little break from our story. So instead of judging what other people are doing in their story, just watch it like a show. Wow, let's watch this show today. Wow, Lena, your show is awesome right now. Thank you, because really, I needed that. Because sometimes you do. Sometimes you really need to watch somebody else's story for a while, so it can just take you a moment to just take a break from that inner dialogue that's just constantly just picking at you or talking to you or telling you that you're wrong. And so it's better when you are around the people that have the biggest stories. So the people in your life, maybe family members or friends that are so sucked into their story that it's so easy to see, whoa, they're definitely in their story. But you can watch it without being judgmental of it. But you can watch it and see like, wow, that is exactly where I don't want to be. Thank you so much for letting me see your story. It's really reassuring to yourself when you do that. But then when we get around other spiritual people, we could start to feel like, oh man, that person's way better at their spirituality than I am, because I've been down this road and I was down this road today and I didn't think like this or I thought like this. And that is something that my spiritual ego loves to do. When I'm feeling an ego and I'm feeling like really upset that I was triggered and I left my consciousness to go to ego, I start judging myself that I'm not as good as a spiritual person as somebody over there that wrote that book, that put it in and is famous for that book, even though she's saying the same thing, she's got to be better than me. And then I take a step back and it's like, whoa, that's not consciousness at all. That's not higher self. That's just my ego running story, playing story. And this is where it's better to wake up. And the way we wake up is we just recognize that we were in our story for a minute. Oh, wow, we were in that story again. And then we sit with our feelings. How does it make you feel that you were in your story? It kind of feels embarrassing. Kind of feels like shame. Kind of feels like I shouldn't be there right now. But then all I'm doing is judging myself again. And so it's acceptance. It's that feeling of being softer on yourself. It's that feeling of knowing that you're not perfect because you're human and you haven't separated yourself from your duality yet, and that's okay. We're in the ascension process right now. The more that we can consciously be aware of our thoughts and what's going on around us, the easier it is for us to really be aware that that's where we are right now. But the thing that you must remember is your job is not to wake up anyone. As a spiritual person, your job is not to wake up anyone. Your job is to wake yourself up. That's it. You will be complete once you wake yourself up, because that vibration is amazing. That vibration is something of peace. I believe Georgie and I were talking the other day, and she's like, I really think I've gone through the ascension process. And I said to her, I'm like, I know you have because my mom told me you did. And it's true. She doesn't have that judgment feeling. And it is easy for her to say, just let it go. But it's okay, because it's very calm and peaceful to be around her. And it's very accepting when she tells me I'm in my ego. Even though I might be a little defensive about it, I'm more accepting because her energy is so pure and kind. and non-judgmental about it. She's not judging me because I'm in my ego. She's just making me aware that that's where I'm coming from. That's the place I'm coming from. And it's a lot easier when somebody's like, hey, you're in your ego, for me to be aware of it, to just be like, hey, oh my gosh, that's where I've been. I'm back now. Hey, I'm better. It's okay. You know, and this is a place when you start to realize when other people are in their stories that you can listen and practice listening. Because the more you practice listening to others, the more you can start practice listening to yourself. Because some reason, we think we know it all. We think we know it all because what happens is that we become this place in ourselves where we think we know everything. We create the idea that we know everything. And when we go into that awareness and we think that we know everything, you really know nothing. And so that is a place of uncertainty. And that is where we have to start realizing one thing first before I go any further. Our story is not a curse, but a gift. The story that we were given is a gift, because that story, all the pain that you feel, all the excitement you feel, all of the feelings that you feel with yourself and others within that story, that is all your chance to get towards consciousness or higher self. That is your choice to get to higher self based on feeling those feelings, giving yourself an opportunity to feel, giving yourself an opportunity to realize that when you're in your ego, it is your chance to sit back and watch and feel and know that when you're feeling it and you go through that feeling where it starts with a stabbing heart feeling and it comes from that sensation to a I'm okay feeling, and you realize that you are okay. But here it is. Get away from your ego self. You must stay in uncertainty. You must find comfort in uncertainty. You must love being in uncertainty. And to do that is to leave behind the story of the image that you think you have to be. Because when I'm saying uncertainty, that's the future. It's being comfortable not knowing what's next. Being comfortable in that environment of you don't need to know until you need to know. And that comes, in a sense, from just being in the present. Staying present without thinking of what's next. Staying present, and when you need to know, it just pops up, okay, now I need to know this. Because all of the things that you're thinking about of the future is not real. And so to be free from your story means that you don't have to feel like you have to justify your experiences anymore. So when you are in the present moment, you're no longer feeling like you need to feel like you need permission to be in your story. You don't need to feel like you have to justify your emotions or why you're here or what's going on. You don't have to justify anything to anybody. Because when you're present, you react at the moment that reaction needs to happen. Just like if this pencil was about to fall and I have to catch it. I didn't react until the pencil was just about to fall. At that moment, I reacted. I didn't have to think, oh, the pencil's falling. I just reacted at the moment that I needed to react. And when you're guided, we start to let go of the blaming others for the story. We stop blaming others for not participating in the role that you gave them. That's a huge one. And that's really uncomfortable for a lot of people. And we have to let go of their stories and you say, okay, you no longer need to be that character anymore that I've created. Especially parents. The parents, it's the hardest thing for us parents, because when we're parents, we tend to have this idea on how our children should be, how they should act, how they should grow up, what jobs we hope that they achieve, what monumental experiences we think that they're going to go through. And when they stumble and when they fall, it didn't lead into the story that we created, is it? Because we never create a story of sadness or despair for our children. We create the experience that they're going to have all the beauty and love that I never got. They're going to have all of the best things I never had. Wow, that's a lot of expectation for those kids now, isn't it? It becomes really hard for them to live up to the story. And then they start drifting away from the story more and more. And now you feel like they're drifting away from you, but it's not you they're drifting away from. It's the story you created for them. And in your mind, they're drifting away from you. But it was only the story that you were telling yourself of, this is what my child's going to do. This is the person they're going to be. This is how they're going to feel. And none of it is ours. None of that is ours to create. All we can do is love them unconditionally, with no judgment or reason. We just love them because they're human beings in our lives that are showing us a story that we get to watch. Where's the popcorn? That's it. And it gets really intense when somebody is close to you that you're loving and watching the story. You're like, oh my God, no, don't do that. Don't go in that room. No. It's like a horror story. You're like, oh no, they're going to go there. And then they zip off to around the corner and they were fine. Because that's what normally happens. Because even the hardest things that we have to watch our children go through, they're okay. They always make it. You know what? Because they have their spirit. Their guide is talking to them saying, hey, guy, you got to feel this, man. You got to go there, man. You got to do this. And it's going to hurt. And it's going to feel like crap. But guess what? It's okay. Because I got you. Because guess what? Human beings on this planet right now that are surviving for the ascension, they are incredible beings. They are the ones that are willing to go through the process of complete uncertainty. When we went through COVID, there was such an uncertainty that people were like, oh my God, my whole world is gone. And that was part of the process for ascension. That was a part for us to realize we need to stay in uncertainty more and more and more. The more that we leave the expectations at the door and the more that we are comfortable in the present, the more that we allow consciousness to speak to us in a very soft and loving way. And when it hurts, it's okay that it hurts. It's supposed to. It's not always supposed to feel good. Some of the most intense, amazing workouts of my life were the most intense, insanely sore, painful processes to go through. I ran 3 miles for the first time in my life. I've never run as many miles as I have today. I ran 3 miles without stopping. And that's a because I was never a runner. If you asked me 10 years ago if I like to run, I was like, no, I don't run. I do not run. And that was me. I'm not a runner. And so in those moments of my life, I knew myself as not a runner. But if I kept myself in that knowing, I would have never run the 3 miles today. I let myself be the person I am right now. And after all of the hard work of synergy and everything I've done for the last 10 years, I've put myself into a position where I can run. And that is a very big deal to me. Because I was an overweight child because I ate to push down my feelings. And that was my shield, was food. And that was the shield that my family gave me. And that was the shield that I thought was right. And the more that I heal, the more I realize food isn't really necessary for me to feel that feeling anymore. Now I can go for a run if I want. Or I can go for a walk. Or I can meditate. And all of those things, if I do none of those things, I'm still growing spiritually, just to let you know. Because any moment that we're in our life, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So it's all spiritual. You can do nothing. You can be a lump on the couch and you're still being spiritual because you're alive and breathing. And it's still your consciousness before we got here chose that was how we were going to start our lives. I'm going to start out a lump on a couch because I don't feel like I'm worthy. And then one day I'm going to do something and it's going to change my whole entire life. And it takes one moment, 1 second of presence that we can just change our whole entire perspective completely. And yeah, you're going to be pulled out a lot because ego is still there. But the more that you accept yourself of who you are, the more that you're okay. So you got to understand, with the spiritual process, we needed to have the judgment and ego there. It had to be there, or else we would have been crazy. We would have gone insane. We needed those shields to help us get through some of this really intense pain. Because I know some of you may realize when you lose a parent, it is the most, or anybody that's been close to you in your life, it is a heart. It goes right like a knife in your heart and it stabs. It's like it really feels like you can't breathe. It hurts so bad. And so in those moments, ego has to be like, hey, shield, I need that shield. Because, man, that was really painful. So we're going to go through processes. And something's going to trigger you one day and it's going to drop that shield right away and you're going to feel very vulnerable and open. You're going to be like, that really, really hurts. Oh, my God. Shield's going to come back up. And then a trigger is going to happen. You're going to open up your shield and you're going to feel it again. And the more times you feel it, the more better you get, the more open you get, and the less pain that you feel. And then you just go on to another piece of the whole progression. Because we're on this ladder of ascension. Ascension's like a ladder, just like our chakras are a ladder. You know, you might be feeling really good up to about here, and then we get the throat chakra, and we're like, oh my God, it hurts every time I go to the throat chakra. And it's because we're just working there, and that's where the energy is, and that's where it sits, because it's vocalizing your pain. It's that vulnerability that you feel when you're speaking. But sooner or later, you find your words, and you go up into your pineal gland and your pituitary gland, and you get really spiritual, and then you get knocked into your ego again, and you feel like you're just not getting there, but you are. And your story is there because it's been your shield to help you go through the process. So we're not like open Band-Aids with gushing wounds all over the place. We don't want that. So our story is super important. And it's up to us to be able to work within that. Not so much pressure, not expecting everybody else in their stories to do it the way that you do it. You know, and when we're comfortable with not caring so much about what everybody else thinks, and we're right in our stuff, and we're feeling our stuff, and we're feeling good within ourselves, it's okay to start working on our feelings more. And we realize that consciousness is like, okay, you got this, you're okay, you can do it. And you just go there. And the thing is consciousness is rebuilding. It's changing you. Every second, consciousness is rechanging you. So when we're trying to figure out what's happening next, how can you possibly know? Because at that next moment, you could be a totally different person. But you have to be here in the now and staying in the now to get yourself ready for that place to be. And that is what's super important about all of this, is being able to be gentle with yourself when we're in ego, and loving yourself when you're in spirit, and taking the journey and being brave enough to say, yeah, I was an ego. Yeah, that really hurt. But yeah, the more that I do that, the more I recognize where my triggers are. And knowing your triggers is another ring. You're another rung up the ladder of, okay, I get that. Okay, when you tell me that I'm wrong, I don't care who you are. You say, Desiree, you are wrong. You triggered me. I'm going to lash out and I'm going to say some really nasty things, and it's coming from ego because that hurts in a place that doesn't feel good to me. And then I just say, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to lash out at you, but you just triggered me there, and that wasn't feeling so hot. And in that moment, that wasn't godly for me to be triggered like that, but it was godly because that's what I had to know. That when somebody says that to me, that really hurts deep, and that's somewhere I want to be. And I'll sit with it for a minute and be like, why am I so upset about being wrong? because ego doesn't want to be wrong. And ego wants to blame everybody else for why you're not right. And I'm talking about myself. It could be different for you, obviously. But it's about participating and witnessing the whole story. It's standing back and watching. And now that you have a new perspective and you're watching everybody else's story happening, you can start stepping back from it in a way where it's like, wow, I would have written that one differently. I would have written that character a little differently. Because the thing is, too, you got to think about this, is when you're writing your characters and you're seeing them, you might see your child as way more confident than what they perceive themselves to be. So when they act, or when they go through things and they're not acting strong and confident, even though you've seen strong and confident from them, they're not playing the story that you've written for them. And that's really hard. Or if the parents, let's say we had parents that we expected to be like moms that love us, moms that care about us, moms that are actually there for us. We think that's the place that moms should be. We created that character, you know, because in a lot of stories, in a lot of places, moms are supposed to be there for us and love us. But that's not always the case. Not every person in this planet was born to a loving mother. And so when that mother is not loving in our story, we're mad at that person. Why are you not working in my story the way I want you to? It's your fault I feel this way. And that's okay. In that moment, it's okay. And when you take a step back and realize, wow, they didn't play that my story that right, you start realizing what a director you really are. Remember, you're the creator. But when you start to realize and accept people for where they are in their story, it's a lot easier for you to just focus on you and how you're thinking and where you're feeling and where you need to be. And that's a good place to be. And the thing is that you need to take this big lesson here to accept. No matter what you're doing it with consciousness. And when you're awake in your consciousness, your ego will need to do things that participate so that it can heal. So your ego, when we're awakened in our place, the ego needs to participate in the awakening so it can heal. So while you're healing these really deep wounds, ego is like, okay, I need to participate because I need to heal this, or else I'm going to keep shielding you every time you're triggered. I need to heal this part of yourself. So we need to go there. And it's like this little dance that you're going to do with your ego. And when you're in that spiritual place, because it's like, let's say you've been working on yourself, you do the meditations and you go to your healers and you go to your Akashic readers and you go to all these different people, your team of spiritual advisors, and you're in there and you've become very spiritual yourself. And then all of a sudden what starts to happen is no longer do we just have like regular ego that lots of these people have around them that don't even realize their spirituality. You become spiritual ego. And we start watching these people around us and be like, ooh, they're in their ego. And you can point it out. Wow, they're in their ego. Or, ooh, they need to, let that go. Or they need to watch their thoughts better. And I've said it myself. I'll put those words out there because that is what I believe that needs to happen. And that is true. We all need to let go of our story. But it's time to really begin to realize what that story is all about. So it's a little more gentle. So that when it doesn't happen like this right away, we realize it's because our spiritual ego needs to heal. Because think about it. It's like we put these expectations on, well, I've lived this long in my life now. I should be right here in my spirituality by now. So many times in my life, I look at my age and I look at Georgie's age and be like, where was she spiritually and where am I spiritually? And I should be there by now, thinking that somehow it's some race or some kind of rung system that's like, man, I worked so hard, I should be there by now. Wow, that's ego, right? Wow, that's ego. Woo, that's some serious ego. And it's my spiritual ego. So now it's like double timing my embarrassment. double timing that feeling of, wow, that's really humbling to recognize I'm in my spiritual ego right now. It's a humbling place to be. When I'm mad at myself that I just completely freaked out about something that was in my life that wasn't spiritually sounding at all. But we have to be patient while we go through a process. Because when we're finally forgiving and loving ourselves and we sit with that space for a little while, it's not so bad. Our higher self in that 8th chakra is not judging us. That's the beauty of it. Consciousness is not judging us. Human self is judging us. The human parts of ourselves are judging us. And so really, when you begin to understand that, the more that you can understand that it's okay. It's being patient with yourself and observing where you are right now, staying present. So something interesting that I heard, and I really want to share this, is so we understand being present is where we need to be, correct? We need to be present. Stay present. We hear that a lot because in our present moment is where we're going to pick up consciousness and the guides are going to come, right? So that means we have to let go of all the expectations of the future and what we think the future is going to happen. So when we want to go and connect to our guides, a lot of us are like, why haven't the guides come to us? Why haven't the guides come to us? Why aren't the guides here? Why are the guides over there talking to that person but not talking to us? Well, us intellectually spiritual people, you guys are all very similar. We want to negotiate with the guides. We want to negotiate. It's not a, come and help. It's we want to, can you like eliminate this and then I'll do this for you. And the guides aren't there to negotiate for us. They're not there to say, oh, I'm going to take your pain away. That is not what the guides are there for. But we want them to because it hurts so bad. Please take this from me. They're like, whoa, you decided to come here and do this. You're the one that signed up for this. We're not taking that away from you. That's your choice. You chose this. That was your choice. Coming here is to choose these experiences. But you can ask the guides, can you soothe my world when I'm going through life no longer hiding? Can you soothe my world when I'm no longer hiding? When I let the shield go, can you soothe my life in those moments? So we don't want to ask our guides to rescue us because we came here with the ability to get through it. We have the ability to do this. We have the ability to go through our stuff. We're not asking our guides to rescue us. But you can ask your guides, why am I doing this? Instead, ask them, how are you going to be more involved? How can you be a more evolved human? And is there anything I can do to make this a little easier? How can I be more evolved? Asking your guides, how can I be more evolved as a human being? And how can I make this a little easier? How can this be easier for me? How can I help myself find an easier path for this? For me, every time I ask my guides, they're like, you need to surrender that stubborn headness that you're doing right now. Let go, you just surrender. Surrender to that ego that's saying that you're a bad person for going into that space. Surrender for that moment. Surrender to the thought that you think that is the only way it's supposed to be done. Having to stop looking for a way out is how the pain will go away. You have to go through the pain. You have to go through it. When I'm running that last mile, I'm like, oh my God, please just, I got this. I got this. I got this. And I do, I have it. And I did have it.
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah.
About the pain and going away?
How to stop looking for a way out is how to stop the pain for going away. Stop looking for a way out. We're not looking for a way out, we're looking a way through. Go through it, not out of it. We chose this. We chose this story because the last lifetime, when we watched our reel of who we were in that lifetime, we're like, oh, I could do that better. Oh, I can do that better. Oh, I know that better. But guess what? We come here without knowing what we already know. But we do have that knowing. Doesn't that sound crazy? But only in that moment that we needed to know. Meaning we can't project all of the experiences we have before. All we can do is be in the present moment and how it looks now. And the ability to evolve comes from the most uncertain places. When you're in uncertainty, that is where you will evolve. When you have no idea what's coming next, that is when we will evolve. Why do you think everything stopped in March? Complete instantaneous uncertainty. We have no idea what's next. That moment was a place where ascension was beginning. That moment is when that uncertainty unfolded and we all had to respond to it. And we did, really. Y'all did. In some way or another, you dealt with uncertainty in your own way. But in the moments where we didn't know what was next, we had no idea. And we had to stay in that place of unknowing. And it was a practice for us. It was a practice for us to be more comfortable of saying, you know what, I really don't need to know. And it's comforting in that moment. And you'll know in that moment that you don't need to be fixated on fixing. There's nothing to fix. There's no need to be thinking, how do I fix it? 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 There's nothing to fix. Until the moment that you need to react, that is when you'll react. Until then, that's it. And the information is right for right now, until it's not. And new information comes in. And then that information will be right for right now. And so that's the understanding of this linear timeline that we have, is being present in each moment, because then we can be more aware that we didn't know until we needed to know. Isn't that what our parents used to say to us when we were kids? You don't need to know. We'd ask questions and they'd be like, you don't need to know. You'll know when you need to know. I think I heard that a lot as a kid. I would ask, okay, what's next? Or what's going on? And they'd be like, you don't need to know until you know. And then in the not knowing, you're in the world of endless possibilities. When you step into the world of uncertainty, that gives you an opportunity to be in the world of endless possibilities. And when you're comfortable in that knowing is clear, that becomes clear. It's the clarity that you get from the unknown. And the clarity of just being comfortable there. The more comfortable you can be in the unknown, the more you're not controlling anything. You're not controlling the outcome. If there's a decision to be made, it'll be made when that person says, hey, I need to know right now, what is your decision? And then you'll know. If you don't have an answer, it wasn't meant to be. Wasn't, I don't know, then that wasn't the question to ask. Because the thing is that when you know, you know. And so it's really about stripping away from judgment and saying, I'm ready to be uncertain of the narrative that means I don't know. I'm ready for the narrative of I don't know what's next. I am going to trust that I will know when the time is right. And if I don't know the answer, it means the timing isn't right yet. And there's some more things to feel before we go any further. And the uncertainty is the deepest part of surrender. It is the deepest part of surrender when you are in that part of present moment. And in that deepest part of surrender, it is about truly loving yourself. Loving the utmost parts of the self. Every single piece of the self, we are loving. And in that loving place, that is where you can start to love others. But until you begin to love yourself, you will not be able to love others the same way that you really truly desire somebody to love you. So that is really deep. And that means your children too. You want your children to love you, and you want your children to love them. You have to love you so that you can project that for others to love themselves. And really, it's about realizing that you have choice how to care for yourself during life's circumstances, how you view things, and you have the openness with yourself that when you open your heart to the experiences and you're feeling them, you have the choice to experience it however that you want. And understand that sometimes the feeling is not going to be a good feeling. It's going to hurt. And you can choose to sit with it in that pain place and know that this is consciousness learning the feeling of pain in this experience. And what happens once pain happens, what's the polarity of pain, is peace. You get that peace. It's going through the pain to get to the peace. But if we push it down and pretend it's not there, or if we just take our shield and put it up every time, it's just your choice of how long it takes to get there based on the feelings and experiences and the way that you choose to experience it. And noticing that when other people are going through their pain, they're going to do it differently too. They're going to go through it their way. I'll tell you right now, Jason and I, we go through pain totally different. And I have learned we've been together 20 years, I've learned that he has to go through it his way, and I have to go through it my way. And if I expect him to do it in a different way, that's not fair. If he needs to express himself in his way, he's got to do it his way. And me forcing him to do it another way that's not his way is not fair to him. And him forcing me to do it in a different way is not fair to me. But it's really hard when we're in ego mode, saying, stop doing it to me. Stop doing this to me. Stop doing this to me. Because when we're in pain and we're putting a shield up, we're in ego, and ego is going to tell us that it's everybody else's fault. So, for instance, if you're in a stressful situation in your life, any stress in your life, what that is telling you is that you're not in spirit self. You are in ego self. And in ego self, it's stressing you out because these people are not playing the part the way that you want them to. They are not doing and living up to your expectations on the role that you gave them. And so the stress relief comes when you let go of the idea that they have to do it your way. And when you let go of that, you have more peace. And you have more time to reflect on the story. And more time to feel it in a different way. And more time to allow yourself to go through the process. Because I know that it can be frustrating at times when you're going through painful situations and people are just like, you've got to let it go. And it happens. We want to tell people, let it go, because you can see how painful that they are. And from our perspective, they should have let it go years ago. Why are you still carrying it around with you? But we have to understand that their process is theirs alone, and they have to go through it in the time that they need to take with it. And only their higher self knows how long that they need to experience it for them to heal all of their lifetimes of going through it. If you are holding on to pain from multiple lifetimes and you're dealing with the pain now, you think the sword is going to be a little bit long? It's going to hurt a little bad? Maybe a big bad? It's going to hurt really bad. And so it's just a matter of consciousness saying, hey, I need some time to really feel that and experience it and go through it. And you are courageous enough this lifetime to recognize it, ascend from it, and raise your vibration. Good job. You decided to come through the process. You decided to be here for it. And it is extremely important to understand that you are doing it beautifully. You're doing it exactly the way it needs to happen. There's no pressure, there's no rush, there's no timeline in fifth dimension. You're here doing it. And it's going to be like this when it's ready. One day you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, whoa, I feel pretty good. Wow. It doesn't feel so bad anymore. That story that I've been carrying around, it doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel like as bad as it did before. And you're going to realize, wow, I had to really go through that a bunch of times. And then we have people that are amazing healers like we do in this tribe here that are experiencing things and reflecting for us. And when we do that, we are healing ourselves. We are healing those pieces within ourselves. And our evolution is about remembering that we are compassionate. We are remembering ourselves. We are remembering who we are in all of those places of ourselves. And when we do that, we are healing, we're raising our frequency and vibration, and we're seeing ourselves from a new perspective. All of which are there all the time, ready for you to access it. So, okay, I have just spent an hour speaking my truth. And I am telling you, I'm working on all of these things. I really am. Because I've been really hard on myself going through the spiritual journey through the chakra system. Because each time I teach a chakra, I go through this period of like, oh my God, I just opened another chakra. Holy cow, oh my God, oh my God. And it's really intense, and I get really ugly, and I get really mad at myself and super embarrassed and then humbled. And then I go through the process of picking myself back up and being okay again. And so I think that it is important to recognize that our story is important. That shield is important so we don't go crazy and so that we don't bleed all over the place. It's like the Band-Aids that we need to go through life so that you can be a little bit more patient with yourself when we go through those processes and understand that you just are where you are.